Stay tuned at the end of the video for an update on the channel. Hello friends, I'm Das Food, and today I wanted to answer a question about Dead by Daylight's lore, that being, which killer is the best at their job? Meaning not which one is at the top of a tier list, because I could sit here and I could give the same tired platitudes about how strong Nurse is and how great Nurse is, but we don't care about that. What we want to do here is we want to look at the lore and say who killed the most people before being taken by the entity, before joining the fog and becoming a monstrous version of themselves. Who was already a monster? Now, I looked around and this video doesn't seem to exist on YouTube. Nobody seems to have done this, and at first I was like, how? How is this not a thing? This seems like such an obvious video to make. And then I started doing my research and it dawned on me. This video doesn't exist because it's not fun to make. Over my time doing research for this, I was so blown away by just how damn ambiguous so much of the lore is about who has killed who and when they did it and how they did it. And I realized that there is no way to concretely say, here is who has killed the most people, here's who's killed the 5th most people, yada yada. So if you're here for concrete answers, I apologize, I can't give those to you. What I can do is tell you that I have read all of the lore, all of it. And I have watched any films that I needed to have watched, and I can pretty confidently say that I have a good list here. I have a good list, and I'm not going to build it up anymore. I only need to give you a few caveats here because I don't want to mislead you. Caveat number 1 is that I did not include any kills mentioned in the Midnight Grove tome because I believe that was supposed to be more of an anthology series and is not canon. If I'm wrong, I do apologize, but they really don't seem like they were supposed to be canonical. Secondly, I had to get a little picky with certain killers. So we all know that Michael Myers has a ridiculously high body count. But what kind of body count does the Michael Myers that we have in DBD have? Because I think that's a different question. Obviously, Michael has tons of timelines through numerous reboots and sequels, and I had to get a little picky here because I didn't just want it to be, well, all the licensed ones have the most kills, and I had to get a little picky. So with all that out of the way, let's get into it and let's talk about who has the most kills, or sorry, we're going to start with the fewest kills. So we're only going to count 26 of them. There are 29 killers in total. I have 3 of them that I listed as impossible to place. Now, you may ask, why would they be impossible? Let's get into that. Let's talk about it. So firstly, the one who had the best case for being included, but I still decided not to anyway, that being the Blight. Now, why would I put the Blight in the category of saying that I don't think I can rank him? It's because I was so torn. So I'm not counting accidental kills. So for example, when we get to the Wraith, I'm not counting the people that he killed unknowingly, the ones who were put in the cars that he was crushing when he thought he was just genuinely turning cars into cubes. I'm not counting that. These are murders. These are intentional kills. So Blight presents a dilemma with that. Blight could be listed as having killed 0 people, or Blight could be listed as having killed, quote, a factory's worth. That's in the lore. So for those of you who don't know the lore, Talbot Grimes was a scientist, and he would make this drug, essentially, that made him kind of famous, not on a worldwide level, but within certain areas of the world, because it would reduce the amount of rest that workers needed, and it would improve their productivity. And unbeknownst to him, this drug killed, again, quote, a factory's worth of people while he was away, and he was beaten down for it. And so here's my thing. Yes, his drug killed these people. Nobody's going to deny this drug killed these people. However, he had tested his drug on a lot of people with no adverse side effects that he knew of, and it raises the question, okay, so he killed them, but did he murder them? And I think that's a question for a better mind than mine. I'm going to lean towards saying 0 for the Blight, but I understand anybody that's like, yeah, no, he kind of killed those people though. Next, we have another one that is kind of newish, and this one is about as ambiguous it could be, as it could be, that is. That's the Dredge. So when you read the Dredge's lore, it is obvious that the Dredge is likely, I mean, it's obvious that it's some kind of beast from another dimension, and in the lore, it comes and it feasts on all the people as they have killed each other in the cult. But I'm not sure if we can really say Dredge killed any of them, because Dredge seems more like the cleaner. I don't know if Dredge is the boss here. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, but it seems more like some kind of parasite feasting on the negative emotions of the town. And what I wonder as I read it, it describes, quote, death sounds. Does that mean the sounds of Dredge eating their body? Does that mean that the sounds of, tearing into intestines and all that? Or does that mean that they were screaming as Dredge put them out of their misery? I don't know, but I would say that their murder is a lot more on the cult leader than the Dredge. And I'm just not entirely comfortable putting Dredge on here because I don't think this was the first time Dredge ever struck. Dredge is probably some ancient Lovecraftian beast that probably has a lot of blood on its hands. But how much, we can't be sure, and I'm not going to speculate when there's really nothing to speculate on. After Dredge, and this is the final one in the category of people that I'm just not comfortable placing, we have the newest character, that being Albert Wesker. And the issue with Wesker is how on earth do I know what to blame him for, right? So he is a bioterrorist, and we know that Wesker's a bad dude, but basically Wesker's got a lot of blood on his hands. I'm not entirely sure how much we're going to give him there, but I will say that out of all of them that are ambiguous, he's easily the worst guy, and he's got a lot of blood that could probably be placed at his feet. Moving on to the actual list where we can actually rank people, I want to make one thing clear, and that's that if we have people who are tied, I'm going to rank them in terms of culpability. So some of these are all intentional kills, maybe not all entirely murders per se, but, and you'll see pretty soon what I mean by that, but we're going to rank them. So if you have two people that have, let's say, 5 kills, we're going to go who was more malicious in it, who had more reason. The more malicious one's going to go higher up on the list. So starting with number 26, we have the artist, Carmina. Now, Carmina went through a lot, like a comical amount of things happened. It would be sad if it weren't so over the top. And I would say that in the case of Carmina, we're talking about somebody who really is probably the best person that ended up being a killer. The best human being who ended up being a killer. And overall, she had 0 kills to her name, so good on her there. Next up, we have another 0 kill, and that's actually going to be the last one. That being the Spirit, who also didn't kill anybody. Oh, actually, sorry, never mind. Spirit's not the last one. There's one after, but a little more ambiguous. So, Spirit did not kill her father while she was alive. We don't know if she was able to kill him once she became a spirit of vengeance. We're not sure, but we're not counting what happens after that first encounter with the entity. We are counting what they did when they were alive. So we're not really counting what the Spirit did, we're counting what Rin Yamaoka did. And Rin Yamaoka didn't kill anybody, at least that I could tell. Now, she does have that one cutscene in her lore where she's being bullied and she's being physically assaulted, and she takes the kendo stick and just beats down these bullies. And they look to be in a pretty bad way. However, I don't think she could have just casually killed 3 people in the street and it not impact her life in some kind of major way. So I'm going to assume that all of the bullies survived, but if they didn't, that'd be 3 victims to add to the count. Coming in at number 24, we have the most controversial one, I think, because I think some people are going to disagree with me on this one, and you know what? Fair, because I don't really know what I'm talking about here. That is going to be Pyramid Head, the Executioner. So I'm only going to base this off of Silent Hill 2, largely because I'm not overly familiar with the franchise, but I am aware that many people seem to think that it deviated from its roots over time. So, out of respect for an undisputed classic, I'm only counting Silent Hill 2's version of Pyramid Head, and that does not mean, like, I'm not going to count the movies either. Even still, that doesn't really make my job either, because, look, I know not to count mannequins, and I know not to count lying forms, but should I count anything at all? I mean, from what I can tell, Pyramid Head both is and isn't real. It's a manifestation of James's guilt, but, spoilers here, it certainly didn't kill Maria. That was James. So, I don't know that I can say Pyramid Head killed anybody. I think, obviously, if you play the game and you die to Pyramid Head, it's like, oh, but he killed me. Yeah, but canonically, within the tone, like, not the tone, within the story itself, you know, that's not how it goes, and you're supposed to survive. So I'm kind of inclined to say that Pyramid Head didn't kill anybody. I think that you could say Pyramid Head is twisted and vile, but even that is kind of up for debate. So we're going to give Pyramid Head a 0, and I'm just going to ask that Silent Hill fans please be kind to me. It is such a convoluted series with all the lore. It seems great, it seems cool, but damn, it's hard to get into from an outsider perspective. And the first one in our count who has a kill to their name is going to be number 23, the twins, more specifically Charlotte. And I'm not going to count any of the Black Cloaks that died during the fire, because that would be incidental. Victor and Charlotte were just trying to flee for their lives in that moment. I'm not going to, I don't know. So Charlotte sets fire to a village, and you would think that hypothetically that would probably kill at least one person. However, there's no confirmation one way or the other. We never hear about anybody being on fire. We never hear about any of that. So when there's a lack of evidence, I'm going to assume nobody died. However, while I am trying not to count self-defense kills, I'm going to count the hunter that Charlotte killed, mostly out of respect here. Also because it was deliberate. She meant to kill this man, even if she kind of felt like she had to do it. Even though she was weaponless and dealing with both a twisted ankle and an arrow in her calf, Charlotte tore the man's throat out with her teeth. And I think that is excellently done, and I think that earns her a spot here on the list. And at number 22, we have the Plague, also coming in with 1 kill. And here is where it starts to make sense what I was talking about with the culpability. So the twins, or specifically Charlotte, killed the hunter out of necessity. She was being hunted, she killed her hunter, she was then safe. In the case of the Plague, it was more straight up murder. Now, I'm not talking about all the people that died from the actual plague that also consumed Adiris's life, because while you could argue that her ignorance killed quite a few people, it's really hard to blame Adiris, who was an ancient Babylonian, for not, or I think somebody told me it wasn't Babylon, like Assyrian or something, so I apologize. I've read all the lore, but I really thought it was Babylon, but maybe I'm wrong. But you can't blame, whatever, from that era. You can't be mad that she didn't know scientific realities that wouldn't be discovered for another 1,000 years, you know? That being said, she definitely betrayed and murdered Haban, her father figure and mentor, so he goes on the count. There's no doubt that one was straight up murder. However, again, she's going to be below some other people who only killed one person, because you could argue that her mind was kind of tricked and twisted and all that, and she felt this sense of duty, like she had to do it. And as you see, she cries when she does it. She's not glad to be doing it. However, that's probably little consolation for Haban, who again was straight up murdered. Next, at 25, we get to the Cenobite, who also has 1 kill to his name, if by his name we are referring to Pinhead. And look, I know some of you really balked at that one. Some of you just said, wait a minute, what? 1 kill to Pinhead's name? And yeah, look, so there are there are 10 Hellraiser films and loads of additional content like comic books and things like that. But I gotta be selective here. I can't just pick every time Pinhead has shown up on screen or in a page or anything like that and say, okay, well this is canon now. Why? Because I don't know. I'm gonna stick with the first two. I'm gonna stick with the first 2 films because they're the only 2 I actually really like. And I think Pinhead becomes something of a parody of himself by the 3rd film. And sadly, that only leaves us with 1 DOS canonical kill, that being Frank Cotton, who oddly enough is killed twice, but we're only gonna count him once because I mean, you can't die twice, right? Like, yeah, that's not how death works. So, you know, give him 2 if you want to, but I'm going to say he killed Frank Cotton once, but then over the course of Hellraiser 1 and 2, Pinhead doesn't kill anybody else, and neither does Chatterer for that. So I'm going to put Pinhead here, and I'm aware that some people are not going to like that, and I apologize. I'm trying to make people happy, but I have to have some consistency. Beginning the top 20 of the list, we get our final killer who only has 1 kill to their name, that being the Legion. Now, I am aware that it could be possible that future lore adds another body to Frank's count, because I would kind of assume that's a thing that maybe he had done at some point. But I'm currently content to list all 4 members as having 1 kill at the time of writing. So Susie has 1 cosmetic, I think it's the Year of the Rat one, that implies another kill, but to me that's wildly inconsistent with her characterization and existing lore, so I'm gonna reject that. I think that was probably just sloppily written descriptions for a cosmetic. And what's surprising about it is when you talk about the Legion, For all of their bad intentions, the Legion spent most of their time as petty thieves, and only occasionally would do something like burning down the theater, which by the way, nobody was in to our knowledge. So the Legion has 1 kill to their name, but they are some of the more evil members of the roster, but they actually don't have that high of a body count. At number 19, we have the Hag, and this is one of the first ones where I really had to get into speculation mode, because honestly, you could make a case for a couple different numbers for the Hag, and there's not one of them that you could say, oh no, that's definitively wrong. So what I did is I gave the Hag 2 kills, because in her lore it states that, quote, dark shapes, plural, approached Lisa and kidnapped her, and we know that she killed all of her captors before being taken by the entity. So what does that really mean though? Well, it means there were at least 2. Were there 3? Yeah, maybe. Were there 4? Possibly. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of doubtful once you get to that many, but yeah, sure, maybe. But I'm going to play it safe and say 2. We'll say 2 plus if we really want to be a little more respectful with it. But we're going to say Lisa killed 2 plus people, which for somebody who was emaciated and just badly injured and all that, that's pretty impressive. Next up at number 18, we have the Demogorgon. This was another one that was kind of tough because I had to pick and choose, which Demogorgon are we going with? And obviously, it wasn't going to be the Demodogs from Season 2, and I also didn't pick the Demogorgon from Season 4, because spoiler, 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 that one dies in that season, and it gets beheaded. And I know, by the way, before anybody says it, yes, the model used in Dead by Daylight is the model of the one from the Russian prison. I know that. However, I decided we'd go with the Season 1 Demogorgon because I think that one makes the most sense. That's the one that's the most iconic, and that was the one that definitely made Stranger Things such a phenomenon. So that Demogorgon has 3 kills to its name, that being the scientist from the opening scene of Season 1, Barb, and a guy named Shepard who, he walks into the hole in the wall and then the bloody little coil thing comes back out. So we know the Demogorgon killed those 3. Is it possible that it killed other people? I suppose so, but I actually don't think it did, just because it couldn't have done it before the tear was opened, and we know that the tear was opened fairly recently as of Season 1. So we're going to give 3 kills, and that's pretty good for our good boy. 17 and 16 are going to be split amongst 2 very iconic killers, both of them having 4 kills to their name. So we start with the Cannibal, Leatherface. And I'm only going to count the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and my reasoning for that is because as soon as Texas Chainsaw 2 hits, we get a whole new character. Everything's changed, the tone has changed, everything is very, very different. Now, I understand that there is some case to be made that Texas Chainsaw 2 is entirely canonical, and I would say, yeah, it probably is. However, we're going to count the original one here, and in the original, Bubba kills 4 people. I just feel like the cannibal, or Bubba, that we get in Dead by Daylight is a lot more like the Leatherface we get from Texas Chainsaw 1. And in that one, he kills 4 people. So, you know what? I think that's a good count. I think 4 people is fair. Even though, yeah, given that he is Leatherface, and he already has a leather face on when we first see him, is it probable that it's much higher? Yeah, but when we can't be sure, we can't be sure. Next, we have Freddy Krueger, who, look, if we were counting every Nightmare on Elm Street film of all time, Freddy's count would be much higher. However, we know this is not Robert Englund's Freddy, this is Jackie Earle Haley's. And because of that, we can say very safely that this Freddy has 4 kills to his name. Because unlike the original Freddy, we don't even have to factor in child murder. Unfortunately, this Freddy was not a child murderer, he was somehow something worse. Now, we can throw in an extra kill if you want to count the dog that he murdered, but of course we're not counting animals here, so if you want to, go in and bump him up to 5, but currently this is a character that sits at 4 kills. Next up at 15, we have a very bad, very naughty boy, that being Caleb Quinn, the Deathslinger. I gave him 4 plus kills, because we can confirm 4, but how many more, we can't really know. So we know for a fact that when he was perfecting his harpoon gun, the first guy he did it to, he completely disemboweled him, which would kill you today, and it would certainly kill you in the Wild West. We also know that at least 1 guard was killed when Deathslinger invaded the prison, and then after invading the prison, we know he killed the warden and Henry Bayshore. So there are 4 confirmed victims. However, who else can we chalk up to Deathslinger? Probably quite a few, because it implied that there was trial and error getting the harpoon fixed. We only know about one guy who definitely died from it, but it's pretty likely that at least 2 or 3 more did before. But that's why we're giving a 4+, which puts him over Bubba and Freddy, who are a hard 4. Up next, with 5 victims to his name, we have everyone's favorite shy little bing bong boy, the Wraith. Now, obviously, Wraith's weapon is a tribute to one of his murder victims, Azarov. We know he killed Azarov. Azarov makes it 1. However, in the tome where we get the little video of him playing with fire, we see that he kills at least 4 Death Squad members. Now, did he kill more than that? Which is a question we're going to ask for just about everybody. Maybe, we can't really be sure, but again, I have to stress, I'm not counting the people in the cars that Wraith did not know were in the cars. These were not intentional kills, these were kills that were kind of, I would say they were much more on Azarov and the men who put those bodies in the cars than they were actually on Wraith himself. Up next, also with 5 kills, we have Sadako from Ringu. So, I mentioned Ringu, right? We are talking about Sadako, not Samara, meaning we're only including kills from the original film. Thankfully, Sadako is pretty deadly in that film and racks up a solid 5 kills, which, by the way, if you haven't seen it, the last one of those is a pretty tough pill to swallow. Made me very sad when it happened. And yeah, I think it's kind of cool. Sadako is a fairly small character, but actually has a pretty good record of 5 kills. This next one is going to get me in some trouble. This next one was very hard to place, but at number 12, I put the Nemesis, and I gave him, or it, 6+ kills. So before going further, I need to recognize that I am only counting the Resi 3 remake because that's the Nemesis we have in the game. The Nemesis that looks like that, rather than the one from the movies or the original game. In that game, we can attribute a few people as having definitely died at Nemesis's hands, that being the helicopter pilot that he shoots down with his missile launcher, which I'm only counting 1 because we don't know if there were 2 pilots in there. Maybe there were, maybe there weren't. Captain Mikhail Victor, which again, you could argue, but Victor blew himself up, yeah, to try to kill Nemesis who was trying to kill him. So we're gonna say that's definitely a kill for Nemesis's hands. And then finally Tyrell, who gets impaled and then pulled back. And you know, it was just a shame too, because I like Tyrell. But I gave the 6+ because there's the scene where Nemesis attacks the train that Jill is on, and the train is heading out of Raccoon City, and the issue is all of the passengers. We don't know how many there were. However, I recall from my playthrough seeing at least 3 civilians on there. I'm gonna assume it was a lot higher. So 6, we're going 6+, and the plus is very important here. How many lives did Nemesis take? We don't know, but we know it was probably more than 6. In a fun little bit of irony, at number 11, we have the hillbilly who killed 11 people. Now, if you want a more in-depth, deep dive on exactly why and how Hillbilly killed those people, I highly recommend my video on Hillbilly's lore. It was really fun to make, and the reception to it was pretty cool, even if the views weren't really there. Now, who all did Hillbilly kill? Well, we know he killed his parents, Max Sr. and Evelyn Thompson, but then he also killed 8 police deputies, 3 of them named, by the way, Jim, Don, and Rafe. That helps you in any way. And then finally, the police chief, who he just called Chief. And obviously, Hillbilly's killing spree was all done over the course of a day, and, well, not a day, I'm sorry, over the course of a few days, and it was pretty impressive for such a non-violent character who didn't want to be doing this. Honestly, he's got a real knack for it, so maybe we should put him back in the S tier before he decides to add to that count again. As we enter the top 10, we get Trickster, who I credit with 11+ kills. Now, let's count these out and say that there were 4 other members of No Spin, the group that he was a part of, the boy band. How do we know this? Because he said that when he was on stage, the adoration and eyes of the fans were split 5 ways. So that was pretty simple. I can do that math. All of those people died in the fire, and you could say that, well, technically Trickster didn't start the fire, and he didn't even trap them in there. However, I think that Trickster holds some culpability there because Trickster went to let them out and then decided, you know what, I'm going to leave them and I'm going to be the only star here. So if you have the chance to save someone from dying and you choose not to, that feels like murder to me. There are also other individual victims that we know that the Trickster killed, and a lot of them we don't know much. We just know that Trickster killed a college student with a good singing voice. He killed one that's just referred to as the mink boa victim. There was the man whose teeth Trickster removed after killing him. And then there was the fan who he killed in the meet and greet. I'm also going to count Lucas, the Brazilian, who also had a good voice, because look, technically the Brazilian police killed Lucas. I get that. However, it was only because Ji-woon had set up this situation where it looked like Lucas had kidnapped him and was trying to murder him and yada yada yada. All of that came together to get Lucas killed. So I don't think that this one is... I don't think anyone's going to argue that Trickster had nothing to do with this one. And then finally, the reason that we go to 11 plus rather than just saying 11 or whatever is because we have the Mighty One board members who Ji-woon killed just before entering the fog. And the thing is, we don't know how many board members there were exactly, but I mean, we do know it's more than one. So to be safe, I'm going to just count 2 here, even though I would believe that there are probably a lot more than 2 board members. How many? 5, 8, 10? I don't know, but he killed all of the board members, so we say 11 plus for Trickster, who by the way also probably had other serial killer victims, but it's just so hard because we don't get all that much that's concrete with Trickster. At number 9, we have the pig, and I'm going to go on and tell you, if you think the methods of figuring out who's guilty for which kills have been convoluted so far, buckle up. This was the most complex one to hammer out. So what's the issue, right? Why is it hard to figure out who the pig killed and who the pig didn't kill? So the pig is Amanda Young, and she worked with John Kramer, better known as Jigsaw. But it's hard to just say, okay, well, anybody that died in a trap while she was alive and presumably working with him is on her, because we know that while she did work closely with Jigsaw, she wasn't let in on all of his plans, and therefore wasn't responsible for all of his murders. I'm going to try to do my best to attribute culpability fairly, but I do understand that others may feel differently about my findings. So let's start with the kills I'm not counting. Chief amongst these is Donnie from the first film. Amanda technically killed him, but seeing as though she wasn't in on the game yet, Donnie's blood is more on John Kramer's hands. When you give someone a choice to say, okay, well, either you're going to die or this other person's going to die, and that person chooses to kill the other person, it's hard for me to call that murder. That was more for survival's sake. Because remember, she had a reverse bear trap on her head, and if she didn't kill Donnie, she would have had her head explode. I also won't count the police officers who died in the assault on Jigsaw's fortress. While I do understand that she was in league with Kramer at the time, it's kind of doubtful she set those traps up. I think John Kramer was such a perfectionist, I really think he would have set those up even in his feeble state. I'm also not counting Saw 2's Jonas, seeing as though, look, Amanda was involved in his passing. Nobody's denying that. I mean, she was involved with getting him put in the game, yada yada yada. However, this one really feels more like the blame actually lies at the feet of Xavier rather than Amanda. Speaking of, I'm conflicted about counting Xavier or not. Danny killed him and Jigsaw put him in the game, but Amanda was definitely involved. I won't count him, but you're free if you'd like to. And lastly, I'm not counting Eric Matthews. She was in on his murder, yes, but ultimately, I think this kill belongs to the Hoffenator. So, we have her with a count of 12. Who am I counting? Well, I will be counting victims who died explicitly in traps set up by Amanda and not by extraneous means. This includes Gus, Obi, Laura, Addison, Troy, Carrie, rest in peace to the best character from Saw, Danica, Judge Halden, Timothy, Lynn, and slow-ass motherfucking Jeff. It also includes Saw 1's Adam, who Amanda murdered with her own hands. You could also count Gideon, the unborn son of John Kramer and Jill Tuck, but I'd rather chalk that one up to Cecil and really just terrible luck. So that's my final count for Amanda the pig. I'm saying she killed 12 people. You could actually raise this number up quite a lot if you held every single person she was even somewhat involved with their death on her conscience, but I just didn't feel good about doing that. Next, at number 8, we have Michael Myers, The Shape, who I am counting as having 15 victims. Now, I mentioned in the beginning that there are all kinds of timelines for the Halloween franchise, and it's as convoluted as it gets. So, for my taste, I'm only going to count the first 2 Halloween films. And the reasons are that this is clearly the Michael from the original, and then when it comes to counting the second one, it was the first one where he showed an obsession for Laurie. He tracked her across town to the hospital to try to finish the job, and that is the stuff of obsession. Obviously, that would be kind of disregarded in future films, yada yada, so I feel good saying that these 2 are the ones that we're going to count. And in those, Michael killed 15 people, which is pretty respectable given that, especially in the first one, he really wasn't the force of nature he would become by the time of like Halloween Kills. Alright, I'm just gonna go on and tell you now, 7 through 5, this was the most frustrating part of the count to get through because I had to speculate a lot and a lot and a lot. And I know there are going to be people who disagree with my findings here, but please understand, these numbers, they're not entirely pulled out of thin air, but they're also just my speculation. So, number 7, we have Ghostface, who, I mean, what's his count? I don't know. I just know that it's high. He's the first one I'm just not going to give a number for. The reason for that is that we really don't have much in the way of confirmed kills for Ghostface. I would say we have kind of 3 confirmed kills. However, we know that Danny Johnson was a very successful serial killer who operated in the US, and we know that he went on killing sprees in multiple towns in Pennsylvania, Utah, and finally Florida before being taken by the entity. So the odds are this guy's body count, if I had to be modest with it, is probably in the realm of like 30 to 50. He seems like he was one of the most successful serial killers of all time. However, it's also possible that it's more like 12 to 15. We really don't know. It's really impossible to say just how many people Ghostface killed. So I'm going to play it safe and put him at number 7. But again, I do understand if you see it and you say, in my headcanon he killed 500 people, which obviously that's a pretty ridiculous number, but you get what I'm saying. Next, at number 6, we have Herman Carter the Doctor, which again, we have another large body count, but it's kind of uncertain. So I'm going to give him 9+. And the reason for that is we know that he killed 8 of his fellow students during the good doctor, bad doctor experiment where he was trying to extract a safe word from all of them. We also know that he killed Dr. Otto Stamper at one point in his life. Now, what else? We can't be entirely sure because we know that the CIA basically let Herman Carter operate just essentially out of a black site where nothing was off limits, and we know that he lobotomized people, and we know people died from his torture. But, I mean, come on, how am I supposed to, realistically, more than almost anybody else on this list, the number could vary by such dramatic margins. I couldn't possibly tell you, so I'm going to put him at number 6, and I'm going to hope that that's good enough. Next, at number 5, and finishing up the part that I think is the most frustrating for me to try to figure out who killed who, would be the clown, my personal main. And look, okay, so we only have 3 confirmed kills for the clown. I realize that. However, when I look at the clown, this seems like somebody who has one of the higher body counts. So let me go through it. So first, I'm not counting his mother, who died while giving birth to Kenneth. Obviously, we're looking for murders and intentional kills, not incidental kills that a person had no say in. We're also obviously not going to count the birds, raccoons, dogs, and other animals that Kenneth killed, because while those kills were immoral, they don't technically fit the definition that we're going for here. As for confirmed kills, we know that Clown killed a young man in his hometown and cut off his finger. We know that he greased the thing so that the trapeze artist would fall to their death, and then he watched and laughed as they did it. And then we know that he killed a man called Mustache, because the man's fingers reminded him of his abusive fathers. However, it's also known that the clown traveled the US and killed numerous people basically everywhere he went. And the reason that I put him above Herman Carter, who you could say, well, what about Carter? I mean, he's got the higher confirmed kill count, is that we know that the clown committed his first murder as a young man. We know he joined the circus as a young man, and he had time for his hair to gray and for his powerful, ripped physique to get kind of a little on the heavy side. Basically, it would seem like the clown aged a lot over the course of his life. And with that being said, you would think, okay, so presumably he has been killing for a very long time. And it's very obvious he has the type of appetite where he doesn't kill and then go into hiding for 4 months. He kills, moves town, kills again, moves town, kills again. So he's probably, I think he deserves his top 5 ranking here. He's killed a lot of people, even if we can't be sure how many. At number 4, we get somebody with a more concrete number, thank goodness, and that is going to be 54 plus for the nurse. When it comes to the nurse, this is a character who we know killed 4 staff members. That much is beyond debate. And we also know that it is quoted as her having killed over 50 asylum patients. So I give her a 54 plus. I would say that you say over 50 when it's, 51, 52, 53. So I think it's on the lower end there, but that is a pretty high count. And, obviously hers is one of the most tragic circumstances, as really she was there to care for these victims and they were just completely helpless against her murderous rage. And I think that people tend to people say that really it was the tome lore that made her more evil, but when you think of it that way, I think she was just always a pretty nasty person. But you have to commend her because 54 plus kills, that's one of the more impressive totals we've seen on this list. At number 3, I put Huntress, and this was the hardest one. Out of everybody, out of all 29 killers, I had the hardest time with Huntress because unlike the ones that I just didn't feel good about ranking, we know she's killed. We know she's killed a lot. And unlike almost everybody else, we don't even begin to have the slightest idea how many people she's killed. It could be in the hundreds. It could be 50. It could be somewhere in between. I do not know. So we know that she killed Cossacks. We know she killed Germans. We know she went into villages and killed the men, the women, and the boys. We know she kidnapped the girls and would then starve them or let them die by freezing to death. We know that this is a killer who is very malicious and has killed a lot of people. But how am I supposed to give her an exact number, right? I'll put her on the list because we know she has killed and killed and killed and killed, and we know that she knows what she's doing. We're aware, right? We know that she puts on the bunny mask to try to make the little girls less afraid as she slaughters their families. She is aware of what she's doing, and I will die on this hill that she does not have the mind of a child. I'm so tired of that theory. It doesn't hold up. However, when you want to talk about how many she's killed exactly, I mean, take your pick. It's like throwing a dart at a dartboard, right? Wherever it lands, sure, I'm cool with it. So we're going to put her at 3 just to be safe, but if in your heart of hearts you know that she's killed the most people, go for it. At number 2, we have Evan McMillan, the Trapper, who really is not actually all that... It's hard to say. I don't think he's nearly as evil as a lot of the people that are around him, because as you get to this point on the list, you get the Clown and Doctor and Ghostface and Huntress and Nurse, the ones that are just irredeemably evil beyond evil. In the case of Evan, he made one terrible decision, one very wicked decision that ended up killing over 100 people. So obviously he caved in the mine, and that killed, quote, over 100 men. So that already shoots him way up the list in terms of body count, and we also know he killed his father, Archie McMillan. But again, it's kind of one of those things where Trapper would deserve, he'd deserve jail, obviously, for the rest of his life, and there's no way anybody can say what he did wasn't that bad. It was terrible, but in the case of Trapper, it really felt like some kind of terrible crime of passion. And I think it was a bit of an outlier for his personality, because we know that he doesn't enjoy killing. We know that the reason he's got all the metal protruding from his skin is because he fights back against the entity he doesn't want to be a killer. However, if the shoe fits, and right now he is at number 2 on our list, so I would say that shoe definitely fits. Congratulations to Trapper, silver medal, over 100 victims. And at number 1, process of elimination. Probably helped you figure this one out, or just looking at the thumbnail, I didn't clickbait you, it's the Oni. So we have 14 confirmed kills, right? And I'm gonna get into why I put them at number 1 after this, but let's explain the 14 confirmed kills. We know from the lore that Kazan Yamaoka killed his father. It's implied that he didn't know it was his father, I believe, until after he had killed him, but we know he killed his father. We know he killed at least 12 samurai who were guarding the lord who first labeled Kazan as Oni Yamaoka, and then obviously after killing the guards, he went on to kill that lord himself. So that's 14 bodies. However, the lore is very specific in saying that Kazan slaughtered, quote, hundreds of other people. So hundreds, that's the word they use, hundreds. Now, what does that mean, right? 200, 300, 400? I don't know, but that would have been certainly doable for somebody of the size and strength of Kazan in feudal Japan. that was not a time where peasants were very looked after. The lower class was very exploitable, even by the standards of the rest of the world at the time. It was not a good... Japan was a terrible place to be a peasant at the time. It's why, you know, I'm super into like medieval stuff and all that, and when people talk about katanas, you have to realize the katana is not a very good blade. It was a peasant beater. That was what it was used for, and Oni certainly probably used his... Certainly, probably, that's a funny combination of words. That's what he used his for. So I don't feel right putting anyone above Oni when we have, again, from Behavior's own lore, quote, hundreds of deaths that we can confirm he is responsible for. So I say give it to him. Give the gold medal to Oni. Oni, you are the most monstrous of the monsters. Congratulations, you piece of crap. Now, I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you have enjoyed listening to me ramble on about, well, technically I had to speculate here because that's what I had to do for a lot of these. I don't think I will ever update this video when new killers come out. So I hope you enjoyed it because putting it together was not nearly as fun as I thought it would be. However, I am happy with the final result, and I'm glad that I was able to do this. Now, for those of you who are just here for that, you can click off. Video's over. However, I did promise a channel update at the end, and I'd like to give that now. So, for those of you in the know, you know that I am about to move to Budapest, Hungary, and this is a major life change for me. Why I want to mention this here is because I fly out this Sunday to get to Budapest, and I don't technically know where I'm going yet. I don't know my actual address. So once I get there, I'm going to have to tell my family back in the States, hey, here's my new address. Please send over my PC, all that, yada yada. Which means it's probably going to be 1 to 2 weeks before I even have my PC with me, right? And then you got to keep in mind, I'm starting a new school year. I'm having to put together curriculum. I am a English as a second language teacher, or as a foreign language teacher and EFL teacher. I am going to be swamped with work for a little bit, so it's pretty unlikely that I do a lot of posting here on this channel. I apologize for that. I will be back as soon as I can responsibly be back while also giving my all to the school year. In the meantime, I would say once I get all of my PC and stuff back, look for me to be a little more active on Twitch than YouTube for the time being, which is DOS_food on Twitch. If you're not currently following, I know a lot of you are, and I appreciate you for that. But that's the update I wanted to give. I am moving from the US to Europe. It is a massive change. I'm very excited about it, but obviously it's quite the undertaking. So please do be patient. It would just break my heart if we had like a mass unsubbing thing just because, oh, he hasn't posted in 2 weeks. I guess he quit, you know, but I really do thank you guys for the support. We hit 11,000 foodies, and that is just so crazy cool to me. Thank you all for your continued love, and I hope you're doing all right wherever you are, whether it's the US, Europe, or somewhere else entirely. It's a big world, lots of people, but thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, and stick around for my little post update. Until next time, which is going to be in a little bit, but until then, I've been Das Food. Bye, friends.
I've been dreaming on in my head like I've seen it. A life worth living is a life with meaning. I'll do what I love till my heart stops beating. I'm feeding this demon. Got a taste, can't erase bitterness in my